Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. And there's a lovely little row starting to build over BBC Scotland and the cutting of The Nine. This is a BBC Scotland news programme that doesn't get as many viewers as I do. It's a BBC mainstream news programme aimed at a very particular audience, though. It's very pro SNP. Very limited in its appeal, and sometimes I often get more views than some of the broadcasts it gets. That's not surprising, of course, because after all, it's not really looking at the truth. It's only looking at the propaganda. And so it shouldn't really be as a surprise that it has been cut, especially when one looks at the numbers. So we will take a look at this because there's the Tories are saying one thing. It's being referred to Ofcom. The SNP is saying something else. The SNP like their official state broadcaster, although one argues that they have STV, which seems to be the broadcasting wing of the SNP. So why do they need to take over BBC Scotland as well? Unless it is that very sort of National Socialist of the 30s policy of total control of the media. Think North Korea and the blessed leader for whom none can gainsay. So let's take a look, see what is going on. Here we go. So the BBC Scotland has been urged not to bow to Nat pressure and to deliver value for money. Well, it hasn't built, not just the BBC Scotland, BBC in general, hasn't delivered value for money in many a year. And indeed for about, 20 years or so, ever since, or longer, 25 years, I suppose, ever since Blair took over, the BBC sort of threw its hat in the ring with Blair and tied itself to that sort of Marxist left-wing mast. And that's the ship it's sailed on ever since. And the trouble is, when you have something like that, if you can encompass everybody, you have a big audience. The moment you make a division, you lose half your audience. And the BBC decided that that's what they were going to do. They were not going to be impartial. They were going to be very left-wing and woke and, what they call progressive. And they're paying the price now. I'm not paying the price. I stopped paying my licence fee a long time ago. And the trouble is, for the BBC, an awful lot of people are doing the same. And in fact, if you're watching me, you're on YouTube. You don't need a licence for that. And if you're on there watching YouTube, streaming and whatever, then the BBC doesn't need your money. And that's how it should be. If they feel they're good, sell them. Hey, go out then. Put yourself out there. Make yourself payable. You want to stream? Pay for iPlayer. Yeah, make it a few pound a month or whatever for iPlayer. Same sort of thing as you get from Netflix. And let's see how good the BBC truly are. If people want to watch their output, they will pay for it. And if not, why should they pay for it? Why should you pay for a service you do not consume? But with the BBC, this is what's happening. And of course, with fewer people watching, you get fewer people watching The Nine. And that is what's happened. And as I say, more people watch me often enough than watch The Nine. So it's been cancelled. And this row is going on. So Angus Robertson has been criticised. I can't read. Angus Robertson has criticised, not been criticised, my apology. He's criticised the broadcaster for ditching The Nine. But the Scottish Conservatives say the BBC has an obligation to be efficient with taxpayers' money. Yeah, I mean, the Tories are saying, if nobody's watching, you cancel it. Quite right. But I'd apply that across the whole of the BBC. Nobody's watching it, cancel it. And not many people are now. BBC Scotland has been warned not to bow to nationalist pressure and to deliver value for money to viewers. It comes after the broadcaster decided to axe its flagship news programme. It was getting horrendously low numbers because it was utter propaganda. It wasn't news. The Nine has suffered from poor audience figures and a perception of being biased towards the SNP. It's not a perception. When you look at the stories and the subjects and then the way it talks about the Conservative government, the awful evil, and all that, you can see in the editorial decisions of the channel, it is very, very pro-SNP. It currently airs at 9 p.m. on BBC Scotland, which costs £35 million a year to run. And yet nobody watches it. The move needs to be rubber-stamped by Ofcom, but SNP Culture Secretary Angus Robertson wants the regulator to refuse and has demanded a meeting with Tim Davie, Director General of the BBC. The party's Westminster culture spokesman John Nicholson also spoke out against the move. But if nobody's watching it, why provide a service? Just put up a test card. There you go. BBC Scotland, test card. Girl doing noughts and crosses. Only instead of a little clown, do a little, stuffed Nessie or something. Just to give it the ident of being BBC Scotland. You'd have to find a different girl. Get Lulu. She's out of a job at the moment. She's just retired. Get Lulu to do noughts and crosses. Anyway, I know Lulu seems to be my go-to girl, but God, I used to fancy her. Anyway, Steve Carson said the BBC Scotland was looking for different forms of news coverage. Yeah, well, he's looking for the sort that isn't biased and, that people are interested in watching. Unlucky, it's the BBC. Biased and nobody watches. But instead, he said he was very proud of the Nine. Oh, was he? Proud of it? Proud of a failure? So Scottish Conservative Deputy Culture spokesman Alexander Stewart said, in the midst of a cost of living crisis, the BBC Scotland must ensure they are being efficient with taxpayers' money. It is imperative, he says, that BBC Scotland effectively judges viewer demand and ensures changes made to its output deliver value for money. And it was said last week that BBC Scotland was completely revamping its political coverage for the general election. Yeah, it's going to be hate Tories, hate Tories, hate Tories. That's all it's going to be, you know that. Anyway, a new 30-minute news programme will be shown from 7 p.m, while Reporting Scotland and BBC One Scotland will be extended regularly throughout the year into 1-hour specials. 7 Days and The Edit on BBC Scotland channel are also going, with the broadcaster launching a new topical current affairs series that will be published as a podcast on BBC Sounds. Well, if you're doing that, it's no different from what I'm doing. Podcasts on Scottish topics. The difference here is I'm not giving you the propaganda of the SNP's news department. Old Goebbels sitting there, or Muck Goebbels, isn't sitting there behind my back like he is in the BBC. The series run of Debate Night will be increased from 24 to 30, while the BBC Scotland has vowed to increase the frequency of live online reporting and explanatory articles. Well, jolly good. That's what you were supposed to do in the first place, surely. Anyway, Mr. Carson told Scotland on Sunday there were no plan for a Scottish Six, saying we'll actually be offering an hour of news in Scotland across our services that are linked but distinct, and we'll also be extending Reporting Scotland on big news days. And that's fine. I get it. I don't see why BBC News doesn't do a separate output for Scotland. They do it for if ever you travel. What annoys me, I'm just on a tangent time. What annoys me, you get CNN. You travel around the world, CNN's on, and it only tells American news. It's American-centric news. So if you're an American, no matter where you are in the world, you can watch CNN, you get American-centric news. Why don't the BBC, when they do that, when you go around the world, you don't get BBC British-centric news for people travelling all around the world who want British news. You get world news, and it's always about things in Calcutta or in Australia, blah, 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 blah. I don't give a flying F about that. I want to know what's going on at home. BBC don't do it. They hate Britain. They're anti-British. Tangent over. Anyway, broadcaster Stuart Cosgrove, who presents Off the Ball on Radio Scotland, has also weighed in on the debate, saying BBC Scotland bosses are scared to ask for more funding from London, and he told the Herald, who's arguing for the funding in London? London doesn't need it. London's wealthy as Croesus, isn't it? It doesn't even worry about that. BBC Scotland bosses aren't very assertive in terms of fighting for funding. They've made to jump through several hoops when they travel to London. Wouldn't it be great if we applied the Barnett consequentials to Scottish broadcasting? Oh, I bet you get a lot less of it. Scotland and England have both qualified for this summer's Euro, so let's take a look at the BBC's budget and see if Scotland gets 8.8% of it. Well, if you think the fact that all the technicians and all the support staff that are going over there will cover both teams, then you're already getting your share of the tech side of it. And every Scottish game will be shown, so you're having that. So that's a very poor analogy, I suspect. Anyway, I shall round off and come up, but it's just nice to know that they are finally getting rid of the Nine because nobody's watching it. Also the fact it's a load of rubbish. Coming up. All you need to do is stick with this channel and you'll get the truth. Unadulterated by SNP bollocks and bullshit. Unadulterated by spin. Just what common sense tells you to be true. And sure, I'll have a go at Labour and I'll have a go at the Tories when the time comes. We had a go at Gillane. Not Gillane, that's Maxwell. Gillane. Sandesh Gillane. thinking Ghislaine Maxwell. Totally different people, let me tell you. But when he had his £3,000 worth of photographs taken and expensed it, I had to go at him about that. Of course I will, because I don't like that kind of thing. I hate all politicians, with very few exceptions, and I hate all parties. So nobody stays out of the firing line. Anyway, I shall stop there. Thank you very much for watching. Do please hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, leave a like, leave a comment. Do you know, talking's hard some days, and I will speak to you later. Bye.